What's up, narrators? Morris is back here, and we have another episode of the Narratives Per Possession podcast. We're going to have a first tonight. Before I bring our guest on, I'm going to attempt to do a monologue, and this guest requires a monologue because, honestly, before we flipped the switch here, I realized, it feels like I've known this person for, well over 10 years, but, we've only actually been going back and forth on Twitter for almost a year. It'll be a year next month. And so there's a funny story about if you'll indulge me, a funny story about how we have become friendly and got to know each other on Twitter. And so it starts with a tweet that I think is a fun tweet, and it's going to really set the stage for just the whole vibe of when we go back and forth about basketball. But this person here, Chris Steed, which, spoiler alert, we're going to have Chris Steed on in a minute or so. Very insightful, basketball mind, just immense wealth of knowledge. And I saw this tweet one day, and the short of it is a great data-backed story about the value of mid-range jump shots and really what is their proper place in the game of basketball. Insightful stuff. Another mutual friend here, Coach Nick Houseman from B-Ball Breakdown, he had a retweet on it. Long story short, I entered the chat with just my unique way of rationalizing things, and the way that Chris framed, the proper place in the game of basketball for mid-range jump shots. It really should be reserved for in the clock or in the game scenarios, ideally in your best player's hands. It just made me think about chicken wings for some reason. And if you've eaten chicken wings like I have, there's the drums, there's the flats, there's the chicken wing tips. Mid-range jump shots, long story short, if you're going to take them, if you're going to game plan around them, that shouldn't be the first thing you're going for. Just like if you get a nice, delicious plate of chicken wings, you shouldn't be going for the tip of the chicken wing immediately. You have drums, you have flats. Get through all the good meat first, then sell for that scrappy, tough wing tip. I know from experience, again, wing tips are scrappy and tough. But with all that said, that is my short monologue about our friend here, Chris Steed. And with that, I'm going to bring him up to the stage now. Chris,
howdy.
Welcome.
I love that story because, when you talk about the middies on Twitter, you get met with a lot of no, there's a lot of pushback. A lot of people really push hard. There's a lot of people that love the mid-range jump shot, which is fine. But so it was a good comic relief. And that's kind of where we first started talking. I love that story. That was so funny the way that you worded that.
Yeah, it was very much a stream of conscious thing, but it's a testament to your way of being able to I think you take some of the most complex topics in basketball, and it's great that you have the ability to speak very objectively about the things, bring the data, but you bring it in ways where the concepts just really pop, and I think they're clear and digestible for any level of basketball knowledge.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And that's important because analytics plays such an important role in the modern game. And one of the things that you hear a lot is, people will say I don't believe in analytics. And to me, it's you don't believe or not believe in analytics. The data just is what it is. So, I mean, you can embrace it or you can not, but the data is still going to be there regardless of if you believe in it or you don't. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's always something, I think I've come to appreciate is, it's not like you're a hardliner, I'm only an eye test person, or it has to be analytics and only analytics matter, but you bring together, both sides of the aisle or both ends of the spectrum in nearly everything that you put out in terms of basketball content. So I think that's amazing. And actually, so just to I guess share a little bit more about your whole background with basketball, your journey, sure, what you're doing now in basketball, just sort of to give more of an intro to you.
So I'm Canadian. I don't like hockey at all. which is up here. And I've been in basketball my whole life. I played high school up here and college up here, and kind of got into coaching shortly after. Currently, I coach a high school team. I'm involved with the Adidas circuit, and then I'm also the commissioner of one of our prep leagues in Western Canada. So I do get to see a good scope of all levels of basketball, and the more I can take on, the better, despite what my wife says. Yeah, I love being around the game. I love sharing everything that I learn on X. I should stop calling it Twitter. I really do enjoy that. I think that the more people that share the game, the better. I got that from Chris Oliver. His podcast is all about sharing the game, and he's been such a big resource to me. And so the stuff that I learn and study, I like to present on there and have some good conversations with people. So that's kind of where I'm at with basketball right now. Obviously, I have bigger aspirations, but I'm super happy with where I'm at currently with my coaching position.
Yeah. And so how long have you been a high school coach?
I've coached high school for about 10 years. 10 years
Okay.
head coach at a couple different schools. Where I live right now is a really, really popular basketball community. It's in southern Alberta, and it's very unique in the sense that everyone kind of lives and breathes the game. Like we'll get 4,000 people at a high school basketball game, for example, which here is really, really rare. You go down and you play on the AAU circuits and stuff, and there's 10 people in the stands, but here it's a really rich environment where there's a lot of pretty deep rivalries. So it's a lot of fun to coach up here. And I do think that Western Canada is one of the hidden gems in North America. We're starting to see a lot of kids go D1, and there's a ton of talent, especially a little north of me in the bigger cities in Calgary and Edmonton, and west of me in Vancouver. It's definitely a hidden gem up here. So
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, and there's just been like I don't know if renaissance is the right word, but just in general, Canadian basketball really has been on an upward trajectory for the better part of the last, would you say, at least like decade, maybe even longer than that. I mean that
Yeah.
The national team now is reaching, I think, an expectation that for the future World Cups in the Olympics, Canada's going to be a player in terms of like deep medal competition.
Yeah, we have some really good players. The greater Toronto area, like out in Ontario, is one of the best recruiting hubs in North America. There is so much talent there. I mean, all kinds of players play there. That's where Shea was from. Most of the big name Canadian players are from there. There's a few from Vancouver, but yeah, I would say when Steve Nash took off, like around 2005, well, even during his days in Dallas, basketball in Canada started to pick up a ton. Before Steve Nash, we didn't have any fantastic Canadian basketball players, I wouldn't say. I mean, Bill Wennington, who played with
I was going to say, yeah, Bill Wennington is like the first person that comes to mind.
Yeah. But yeah, since Nash, and then obviously the Raptors winning in 2019 was big. Shea getting the MVP. So yeah, it's a sport that's extremely popular, and Canada's really, really diverse too, and so lots of culture. So hockey is still the number one sport by a mile, but with all the culture that we have up here, basketball is extremely popular, and it's getting to be. And you're right. I mean, our men's national team is awesome.
Yeah.
Got a lot of good talent for sure.
Yeah. Selfishly, I am going to be curious to see what your national team looks like. Assuming Zach Edey gets into the fold as well at some point with that program.
Yeah, you're a big Purdue guy. I learned that about you. I love that.
I am a Purdue alumni, so big Zach Edey fan here.
Yeah. Matt Painter's a fun coach. I love that team.
Yeah, I mean I had the privilege of when Matt Painter came into the program, that actually was my last semester at Purdue. So like I came in when he was sort of like the associate head coach in the wings, waiting for Coach Gene K to retire. Mm-hmm. So I had a little bit of a flavor of overlap with Painter on campus, but I have to be honest, I didn't expect this trajectory for Painter when he first came on campus, and it's just been amazing because he really has entrenched himself as like a cornerstone head coach, definitely within the Big Ten Conference, but really NCAA basketball across the board now at this point. Like it's just only a matter of time. I feel like he gets over that hump, finally wins it all, and then he's legend forever in the game.
100%. He encompasses innovation, like modern basketball, which you and I are going to talk about. He's
Yep.
one of the most innovative coaches. Like I put him on the same level as like Bill Self, guys like that. Like he's very, very innovative. A lot of the concepts that you see come out of Purdue NBA teams, they'll copy the college level, they'll copy stuff that he's running. And yeah, he does an awesome job. He's very, very good.
Yeah, I'll quickly shout out a friend of the program, Joe. What? Old man moment. Joe, I'm going to look his name up now. It's bad podcasting, but I have to because
Authentic podcasting.
authentic podcasting. Joe Hoops. He covers Purdue basketball intensively in terms of film breakdowns, but also just NCAA basketball altogether. And it shames me that his last name is not on the tip of my tongue right now. But I will drop that in the show notes. Long story short, but Joe from Boiler in the Stands, I'll shout that out as well. I've talked with him a lot about the evolution of the program and Matt Painter over the last like 4 or 5 seasons. I think the biggest thing was, the year where Purdue actually, got over the hump and got to the Final Four. I think the thing that was most remarkable about that evolution from Coach Painter was just the full-on embracing of pick and roll basketball in a way that I had never seen Purdue basketball run between him or Coach K before. I mean, a lot of what to me, traditional Purdue basketball was under Painter before, like that season, was a lot of motion concepts, a lot of just pin downs and running off screens. And a lot of things, like I know I've read in the past, like Painter, he has a big influence, ironically, from Coach Bob Knight. So, those are a lot of things that were just, I think, staples of Purdue's offense for years. But like when he embraced, well, it's two things, like Brayton Smith becoming like this, all-world point guard at the college level, paired with Zach Edey, it became an unstoppable force.
Yeah, that was fun to watch. And I think, are you talking about the Carson Edwards year, the Final Four run at Virginia? Or are you before that?
That's where Purdue got to Elite Eight. Yeah, sadly, yeah. Where's Carson? Carson, like he was just like he was belligerent from 3. Yeah, that Elite Eight run, yeah, against Virginia, where like so close, but
That was close.
Yeah,
that was wild. He went ballistic. He's crazy. He's nuts.
yeah, and he's still getting buckets over there. And well, I think he just wrapped up with the German team, Baron. But he's been, yeah, I mean, he's had a solid career, at least in Europe. I mean, it's one of those things where I think with the NBA and in his size, unfortunately, it just becomes sort of like a limiting factor.
Of course, yeah. It's almost impossible at his size to be productive in the NBA, especially as a number 1 option.
It is, yeah. And then, it's a good segue because, the things that work at the NCAA level or either, other levels, other pro leagues, right, they don't always translate to the NBA. And the NBA is, there's some elements to the game where it becomes a bespoke game once you enter that league. And so that's, I think, the heart of what we'll get into tonight, right? And I thought is a good sort of table setter before we start talking about some of the concepts that you have for us to share. One of the things that comes up a lot in NBA fan conversations, just like on social media, that I notice is that a lot of people get sort of like mixed up or confused about conceptual basketball, which is becoming a more popular front-facing term. Conceptual basketball versus quote unquote traditional sets or traditional plays. Let's start there because I think that's a good like just anchoring point about like where is the state of the NBA game now?
Yeah, and that's a good question. So conceptual versus scripted is kind of the terminology that I use, but conceptual basketball is based around unpredictability and it's done through triggers. So what coaches will do is they'll give a team a spacing template. So for example, 5 out or 4 out, 1 in the dunker spot. And then they'll play off triggers. So what we see a lot from NBA teams, kind of the modern basketball, is they've got their primary transition, whether that's a 2-side break or whatever they're running, like the Pacers, and then into a secondary break, which leads into their offense typically. So whether that's a drag screen or the 5 rim runs into an action. And then when the action neutralizes the primary action out of their offense, whatever they're running, once the action neutralizes, we'll see a trigger. And so that, for example, with Denver, you'll see Jokic lift to the elbow and they'll enter into the elbow. And that's where it becomes conceptual. So conceptual means that you have principles of play. So the coach will teach when it goes to the elbow, if the point guard runs into a pin down, we're running the zoom action. If the guy guarding the baseline defender is top blocking, he's going to reject it, cut baseline, and the guy setting the screen is going to come back and they're going to play two-man game. But there's a bunch of variables that make it really unpredictable versus scripted basketball. And the example I always use is the flex offense, where you're going to set a screen, receive a screen, and the defense could play that much more predictably. You can see it on scouting. You can recognize all of the tendencies on film, even if they do have like a secondary option or whatever. Back in the day, that was kind of the introduction into conceptual basketball, is having a secondary option. If the defender does X, you do Y. Whereas now, the outcomes at the highest level are endless, essentially. We're entering it into the elbow, that can be a trigger, or we're pinning away into the corner, that can be a trigger. We're entering it into the post, that can be a trigger, into a split action or a cut or triangle set. There's all kinds of different things, but it just depends on the coach's principles of play. And if you can master conceptual basketball, it's essentially unscoutable, which is why good offense always beats good defense. But that's how I differ. Scripted is choreographed. You're going to go from A to B to C. Conceptual, you can go from A to Z, or you can go from A to B, depending on the coverage that you're seeing.
Yeah. And at the same time, even if it's a conceptual sort of scheme or approach, I mean, there's still going to be times, right, where you as a coach, you will still exercise some level of scripted aspects in your game planning, right? Certainly ATOs or in the game situations, like I imagine, like that's going to be a scripted thing, typically, right?
Yeah, you're going to run an ATO, and as a coach, you'll see a tendency of some sort. Like you'll see an Iverson curl or whatever, an Iverson set where you're curling around the high post because you recognize that the person doing the curling is being lock and trailed, meaning they're on the hip, they're on the high side, so you can get away with that curl. Yeah, ATOs is where the coaches can get creative based off of tendencies typically. But yeah, a lot of scripted play still comes into basketball at the highest of levels for sure. No question.
Yeah, and then just to de-abstract that ATO, meaning after timeout. So in your timeout plays, for anybody who's not familiar with that term, usually that's when the coach is going to be on the whiteboard drawing up, quote unquote, the play.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you bring that up too, because with understanding the modern game, like if you want to really get into the weeds and understand the game, you do essentially have to learn a new language, because you can go on Instagram or you can go on X and you can see like a cool highlight and they're going to use terms like dunk or put back or screen, stuff like that. And obviously that's kind of the mainstream lingo, but then you'll go on X and you'll see a coach talk about a Bilbao action or something like that. And just under the assumption that everyone knows what that means. Mm-hmm. And so part of it comes with reps, just reading and starting to understand the language. Once you understand the language, it becomes so much easier to understand the game. And so I do wish that coaches a lot of times would explain more of their language to like casual fans or starting coaches, that kind of thing, just so that it would be easier instead of having to ask ChatGPT or something. So
yeah, and I have to give you a shout out on that point, right? Because I think you do a great thing on X as well, where you have like your series of your sticky words tweets that you put out there, like, and I mean honestly, I probably have at least like 10 or 15 of those bookmarked, because I've used those over my time writing about basketball or talking about basketball on some public level, where it's like it's helped me out a lot, actually. And I think like you set the example for that quite well, of just constantly putting out terms that really should be accessible to anybody that's interested in basketball. They're not like these super like complex secret handshake kind of things where it's like you got to be on the inside to know this. Like I think these are all things where it's like it helps us all appreciate the game that much more.
Yeah, it's funny. Because when I started posting on X about 2 years ago in September, and I'd never really posted on there before. And I said to myself, I'm just going to post every single day about something. Every single day, I'm just going to do it consistently. And it's really hard not to gain a following if you do that. But what I did is I just posted stuff that a 20-year-old me would have loved to have known. And a lot of it was this terminology stuff. So I'll create like glossaries, like here's what you're going to hear. Here's the ball screen glossary, off ball, on ball. And I'll just kind of make a list and post it out there. And it's been popular. People like that, I think, because the language part, And then you have some people that'll just post and they'll, use tough words and the average person has no idea what they mean, so it just turns them off from the whole tweet in general. And so I think that understanding the language is critical, just like anything
Yeah,
else.
absolutely. Yeah, and it's just again, I think what's great about your approach to basketball content and how you talk about the game is that you don't shy away from anything. You don't dumb down anything for anybody. It's always like it's the objective thing, and it's paired with like perfect context where it's like I think ultimately whoever is reading your content or like just following you on X, like I think they should be able to gain a great appreciation for the game because you're really teaching it, and I think that's just it's incredibly impactful.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, one of the most impactful tweets quotes on me was, "Simplicity is the ultimate form of sophistication." And so, I think the elite coaches, business leaders, anything that you're doing, it's being able to take complex concepts and to simplify them, to be able to teach them to people that don't understand it. Teach it. The best way to learn something yourself is to teach it, and teach it like you're teaching it to a 5-year-old. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's see that into even more practical context. You've brought together a handful of different sort of like concepts and examples of things that are
Yeah.
happening in today's basketball. Yeah, like
Yeah.
we'll
So
hand it off to you to start walking us through some of that.
yeah, before I open the clips, I think that one thing about the modern game is, and the way that you can tell that basketball is shifting, is how defenses are guarding 2 and 3-man actions. So when I say 2-man action, I mean like a pick and roll or a single off ball screen, like a pin down or something. And then a 3-man action is a zoom action, which is a DHO into a pin down involving 3 players. And so defenses are going to cover that differently. 10 years ago, about 2019, we started to plateau with the 3-point shot. Yeah, we're seeing a slight increase, but it wasn't exponential like it was, when Morey ball was kind of at its peak.
Yeah.
And things like that, like when Daryl Morey was on he did the Sloan conference at MIT. I think it was 2004, 2005. It just changed so much stuff in the analytics world for basketball. And that was a fun time because Morey worked for the Celtics and illegal defense came into play in 2001. And so you had Thibodeau, when he got with the Celtics, he was also implementing on the defensive side his ice coverage
Covered, yeah.
Yeah, against pick and roll. And so what that did is once they eliminated the illegal defense, he was loading up to the ball. He was sending the kitchen sink to the ball. And we still see that to this day with guys like Kelvin Sampson. But the game is adopted where passive defensive coverages are really what wins now. Aggressive coverages at the highest level don't win as much. And we can talk about that a little bit more. But where I'm going with all of this is what we see right now is teams trying to guard ball screens with with 2 defenders. And what I mean by that is a basic switch. You're involving 2 defenders to guard 2 offensive players. Involving 3 players to guard 2 players is like a hedge. So if I come off the ball screen and the defender hedges high on me with my man chasing me, now there's 2 on the basketball and we're engaging what's called the low man or the tagger in the paint, who now has to step in and engage the roll man so that he doesn't have a free roll to the basket. And so with the evolution of pick and roll, what we've seen is there's such good creators now that as soon as they read the low man coming over, they're going to hit the 3-point shot in the corner. And so teams nowadays are guarding 3-man actions with 3 players, and they're guarding 2-man actions with 2 players at a really high frequency. And OKC and Boston last year had a ton of success just switching essentially 1 through 4, 1 through 5, and just staying neutral. Basketball's the teams that win on defense stay out of rotation. They don't get into rotation a ton. And I have a clip, I'll show you this of, I'm just going to share my screen quick, and it's so fun to watch. Like, it's really, really fun. Let's go here. It's really, really fun. And this is Calvin Sampson. Shout out Hoop Sense. I stole this clip from them, but if you watch Calvin Sampson's team, like he has different defensive cues. Like he's going to double team when the ball gets in the short corner post spot. They're going to peel switch a ton. He's got guys flying around in rotation. It's incredible to watch. But at the NBA level, you don't see this kind of defense because it typically gets punished. I'm going to mute this. But you'll see they're blitzing the ball screen. They're doubling the low post. They're Xing out right here, pushing a double team into here. They're flying all over the court, and they do it crazy. And there's outliers with every single defensive coverage. But this kind of aggressive coverage isn't as popular in today's game because the saying is essentially that two good passes beats any aggressive coverage. And so at the highest level, guards are taller now, really good passers. And then we have a specialized game where players are such good three-point shooters that if you're going to guard two players with one on the back end, you're typically going to get beat. And the three-point shot is obviously a really high points per possession. So you're going to give up a ton of points doing it that way. So staying out of rotation, despite how cool that clip is from Calvin Sampson, is actually how most teams play. And the peel switch is a huge thing in today's game too. But and then there's a couple other concepts that I can show you here. Please tell me I didn't X out of that. Good. So that's how Calvin Sampson plays defense. But 77 action is becoming really, really popular. And this is Sam Bourne. He only has 8 subscribers on YouTube, it looks like, but he's awesome. And I love his stuff on X. He's a good follow
You might
too.
have to bring that back up again.
Oh, I didn't. My bad. Authentic podcast. But yeah, let's look at some 77 here quick. This is a good action.
Yep.
And I just wanted to talk a little bit about what we're looking at here. So I guess the first thing for fans that are watching, or whoever's watching this, good players, the first thing they're looking to do with every single ball screen is reject it, because the coverage isn't designed for the rejection. So in this specific clip right here, I just want to touch on this briefly. So they're setting up for a 77. A 77 is a double ball screen. So we're going to have 2 players come and they're both going to set a screen on their man. But what Halliburton does here is he rejects it. And so when he rejects this, it puts the defense in a long closeout spot. This is what's called a big advantage situation. And so when he puts him in a big advantage, Turner just pins in for Naismith, and that's a pretty easy catch and shoot 3 just because of the rejection right there. Halliburton's a pick and roll wizard, and Rick Carlisle is one of the best defensive minds in the history of the game. He's fantastic. But after this clip, we get into some of the college ones, and these ones are really, really good. But these are examples that he's splitting the 77 there, but these are what 77s look like. So in the college game, you can see that 3 defenders, 1, 2, 3, are guarding 3 players here. And then you can see these corner shooters are really, really occupied. We don't have the defenders in the middle of the paint. There's no tagger here. So this is essentially right now empty because no one's inside the paint right here. And this is just with how good shooters are at the highest of levels now. So we're using 3 players to guard the ball screen right here. The cool thing about this one is he makes a shallow cut. The first defender shallow cuts, and so they rescreen on the under. Sorry, I'm throwing a lot of terminology here, but if the defender goes under on a pick and roll, what we're typically going to see the big do is he's going to rescreen. So he's going to come and try and seal the guy lower in the paint to make the shot easier. And then there's a pin in right there for 3, but that's going to set up this next clip that we're going to see. Yeah, this one. Okay. Okay. So in this specific spot here, the first defender is going to get over. The big is actually playing in drop coverage right here. He's in a deep drop. This is called a deep drop because this guy isn't a threat to shoot the basketball. And so what happens is, because this is a guard-to-guard screen and roll, this first one, pick, most teams will switch guard-to-guard in the modern game. We don't see hedging, none of that stuff in guard-to-guard. Most teams are switching everything guard-to-guard. But now the advantage of the 77 here, the double ball screen, is you can see how deep this defender is right here. And so if he can pick him clean, obviously he's going to have a numbers advantage here if this guy can roll clean right here. And so here's the numbers advantage. The big has to step up here. When he steps up, this is called the tagger, the low man right here. So now the guy guarding the corner 3-point shooter has to step in to take this roll man away, which is going to create a big advantage situation. The defender right here is on his hip, which drives the deep drop up to the level of the basketball to force him to take a mid-range jump shot right here with a hard roll to the rim. And so with that roll, the tagger's a little, this is a big, he's late. Anytime the tagger comes in the smile right here, the charge circle, and this is a big, it's a bucket all day long. Had he met him early, we would have seen kick to the corner right there. And that's one thing that as a point guard, you have to be able to look and to be able to read the second level of all ball screen actions. I'll stop sharing that for right now, but point guards are fine at reading. Did my man get screened clean? Did he go under? Do I have the jump shot? But the good point guards read the second level. Where is the tagger at? Is he early? Is he late? And then that's opening up the corner 3-point shot. Sorry, I just rambled a bunch there, Mo. Does that make sense?
That's great. And I will add this analogy to it. Like when you describe it that way, what it brings to mind to me is it's getting to be NFL time here in America. So football is a little bit on my mind, but it's probably not all that different than for an NFL quarterback when they're making their reads as a passer in that game, right? It's always about going through the progressions of what's my first option?
Mm-hmm.
Like, am I going to get that read? Or if not, then working through the progression, so to speak. And then you think about like in football, there's 3 levels to that defense, whereas like you obviously have the line of scrimmage, then you have the next level with the linebackers, and then you have your deep coverage. That's kind of what comes to mind when you're talking about a good modern point guard right now. It's not just about understanding like how I'm going to get around this pick, but it's like as soon as I get around that pick, where are my reads? Where can I hit? Like, do I have the shot, or is there? Yeah, do I have the corner available to me? I think that's what you're hitting on, right? It's like you have to be able to process all that within half a second, basically.
Very quickly, yeah. And to couple this in with what I was talking about, how that's a 77, 4 players are guarding 3 there. That creates a natural numbers advantage. And so good players can capitalize on that numbers advantage. But the modern game is built around a really simple concept. And I guess it always has been, but analytics has shined a light on it. And that's all basketball is you want to decipher your advantage. So if you're on the fast break and you have a 2-on-1, you have a clear advantage. Is that advantage big, meaning I need to attempt to score now or take space, or is that advantage small? And so the way, for example, I teach my players is big advantage is a long closeout, that type of space. Small advantage is when you've got a defender on your hip. So when you have a defender on your hip, you're going to engage the help side. Once you engage the help side, that creates a long closeout situation. And long closeouts lead to really, really good shots if a team can execute and has good spacing and things like that. So basketball is just about turning a small advantage into a big advantage. Some examples of advantages are a numbers advantage. So a 2-on-1 in the half court, 4 guarding 3, like we saw right there. With a 2-on-1 in the corner because the tagger is responsible for the roll man and the corner shooter. Size and speed advantages. Those are, the mismatches on the switch that we see Luka cooking Rudy, for example. That's size and speed. Those are the biggest ones. Time can be an advantage. Time and score advantages. But it's all about just taking a small advantage, turning it into a big advantage. And that's where this idea that everyone teaches now, like you've got Jordan Knott, who just got hired by Phoenix. You've got Isalo in Memphis, who's one of my favorite coaches in the league. They teach conceptual basketball built around 0.5 second decision making. So catch the ball, lift to shoot. Can I shoot? Is my advantage neutral? Do I have an advantage? If not, let's just move the basketball. Let's get rid of it. And so conceptual basketball has a lot to do with 0.5 second decision making, which is when you catch it, can I score? And Chris Oliver he says triple threat is dead. The new triple threat is score, score, score. Whenever you catch the ball, you should never be looking to pass. You should be looking to attack, to take space first. And so that's another kind of paradigm shift versus the older way of thinking. And what that's created is coaches now teach closeouts differently. You can't use choppy step closeouts. If you look at NBA clips, no one's using choppy step closeouts because Klay Thompson in the corner is just going to look at you and shoot right over top of you. You've got to run them off the line essentially. You've got to sprint to close out. So we're seeing a trickle down effect in the way that kids are being developed and the way the game is teaching, based off of some of these modern principles that are pretty neat. And again, analytics is responsible for shining the light on all of this. So
yeah, I think the things that resonate, just like what you mentioned about the advantages, is that there's a I guess maybe like potentially is it potentially like a hierarchy, or like
yep,
there's a whole ecosystem of advantage there. And I think that's cool to like appreciate as a basketball fan, because especially like putting more context of like what is this conceptual thing. And I have it's on my to-do list, but Caitlin Cooper, she has dropped that interview she had with Rick Carlisle. And I'm really curious to hear how he talks about like apparently Caitlin was like talking to him about like his whole approach to quote unquote random basketball. What does that look like? And certainly that seems to be more of what's occurring in NBA offenses, where it's like on the outs to the uninitiated, it looks like it's just this chaos, but it's an intentional chaos, I imagine, because you're searching out for like these different parameters of advantage each possession.
Yeah, and what Carlisle talks about in that is pick and roll is actually going down. It's still the number one used set in basketball, but it's going down because teams are playing faster and they're capitalizing on these numbers advantages. You're never more open than when you first catch the ball. We didn't see players shooting like quick threes in the shot clock before until analytics taught us that the first 8 seconds are the highest you're going to shoot percentage wise. The middle 8 seconds is lower by 6 to 8%. And then the last 8 seconds, it goes down about another 6 to 8%. So early offense is like Mike D'Antoni when he was with Phoenix is brilliant. And we see that a lot more, which is lowering the rate that teams are actually playing out of half court sets. But yeah, Carlisle, he's amazing. He's so fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, just to see the Pacers in the playoffs this past year, I mean, just getting transition buckets off of made baskets, that and just repeatedly getting that, it was impressive.
Yeah, it's fun because everyone touches the ball. Popovich, one of his sayings that I liked from back in the day was there's power in touching the basketball. And so when everyone's touching the ball, they're going to play defense harder. They're going to rebound harder. They're going to do all kinds of things harder because there's a subconscious involvement in the game. Whereas 2000 to 2010, it was very heliocentric. It was very isolation basketball. And illegal defense, again, kind of put an end to that a little bit, isolation basketball, but it was still very, the ball's in your star player's hands and he's going to do his thing until 5 seconds left and then he's going to kick it or he's going to shoot. And heliocentric basketball, what it is playing basketball with the ball in one player's hands for a large majority of the time, essentially. And we're seeing that less and less, and it makes the game way more aesthetically pleasing in my mind. Again, another modern concept.
Yeah, because I would say, the most famous example of like the last 15 years is, is Harden in Houston with just that kind of dynamic of the ball constantly just revolving around him.
Yep. Yeah, and hunting fouls, and I mean, he always had the ball, and he was awesome. But it's really hard to win basketball games playing that way. I mean, back in the day, like pre-illegal defense days, it was you can't double team anyone off the ball. And so teams would load up 4 players on one side of the floor and put their best player on the weak side. And then he could go to work against half the court, which was fun in a sense that, like, one big difference, I guess, sorry, I'm rambling again, is in today's day and age, where teams are shooting, where players are shooting from is very predictable. Like if you see the shot track from about 2018-19 to now, everything's taken from 3 and then everything else is taken in the paint. Those are just highlighted heavy, heavy, heavy. They're very dense areas. Nothing's taken in the mid range. Whereas like 95 to 2005, it was very scattered. And so it was a more creative way of scoring, I guess. You'd see shots from different things and fadeaway jump shots and a lot of cool things, I guess, which was appealing to the fans. More unpredictable then, more predictable now as to where teams are shooting. Coaches are reverse engineering the process. We want everything in the paint. We want everything from the 3-point line. How are we going to get there now? And
Yeah.
so they use a multivariate approach. The outcome is we want paint, threes, and free throws. Multivariate approach is what are my inputs? What inputs do I have to control to get to there? Am I going to focus on 35% offensive rebound rate? Am I going to try and turn a team over 15 times a game? Am I going to shoot 35 threes a game? What is going to be my way of controlling the data so that everything is taken from here and here? And nowadays, you'll see a spread ball screen simply so that it creates a switch and a blow by to get a 2-on-1 on the weak side, not even really to score as much. The Celtics did that a ton. They would get a switch on Tatum, he'd penetrate, kick it. You got White, Holiday, Sam Hauser in the corner. And I mean, how do you guard that? You just catch and shoot nowadays. They're so good. You just can't guard that kind of offense.
Yeah. And I suppose like that's, I mean, would you say that that's also been a prominent evolution in terms of gameplay in this quote unquote modern NBA is, you know, you have these actions that are more or less just like decoys or like, you know, the setup actions just to actually get to, you know, just like you mentioned, like, you know, you'll run this ball screen so that, you know, you can go find your 2-on-1 advantage, or you can, you know, create some type of collapsing of the defense to, you know, hit the corner. Like those are things that, yeah, to your point, like I remember that as well. You know, 90s basketball, you didn't have, I guess, that level of advantage creation because of, yeah, the, you know, basically legislated spacing because of illegal
100%. 100%. Well, and I mean, the spacing was garbage back then. Like if you entered the paint, there was 15 people around you. You weren't getting a clean look up. So yeah, you had that isolation where you had lots of space to operate. But in today's game, I mean, with getting rid of the hand check, there's so much space in today's game with how good the shooters are, with how the NBA game is called, that it's very hard for defenses. Like you hear all the time, like NBA players don't play defense. That is a really bad take when people say that. It's so much harder to play defense now. Like it is so hard to play defense in today's NBA because you can't use any of that physicality with two hands on the body. It's very, very difficult. And then you're guarding someone 30 feet from the rim, where in 1995 you were guarding someone 18 feet from the rim, you know? So defense is much harder to play nowadays. It's not that there is no defense in the NBA.
Yeah, it's a different style of defense because it just isn't like pure brute force. Because the way the game is called. Although I would love to get your take on this. I mean, we did see increased physicality in the playoffs this year, and I do wonder, you know, if that carries over into this upcoming regular season, where do you see opportunities for defenses to innovate and actually, you know, try to close the gap in so much of the offensive innovation we've seen in the game?
Well, they're closing the gap right now. I think that the switchability now is completely taking away a lot of pick and roll action. Like teams are very good at switching, which is why we do see kind of the counter punch with ghost screens and different things. But the counter punch is there from the defense. For defenses to be able to adapt in today's game, it's how can you stay out of rotation? And so obviously I don't have all the answers to it, but drop coverage has negated a lot of pick and roll opportunity because, you know, the mid-range jump shot isn't as efficient. And then the switchability too. You're still going to have someone like Luka that's really, really tough. Like he's going to be very good in pick and roll, but for the most part, the pick and roll right now is designed to get 2 feet in the paint and then to kick or make a high nailed decision. So the defenses are doing good. We're seeing all kinds of zone looks. We see matchup zones. We see people zoning out screen and rolls, which means they're in man, and then when the screen comes, they go into a zone. They go into a matchup zone from that. Deep drop versus a high drop. Drop coverage means that the big, it's usually a 1-5 or 1-4 screen and roll. The big stays with 1 foot in the paint typically. kind of baiting that mid-range shot, and there's a lot of success with that. But the simple fact that teams can switch so well from 1-3, 1-4, like OKC had a historically good defensive season, and their switchability was amazing. Just how they could switch so many different actions because it keeps the offense neutralized. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's a great point, and really, back to back. If you, between the Celtics championship run and now OKC, like to your point, just to emphasize it, you're seeing these teams that like have absolutely no issue switching 1-5 now, and it seems to be that that's at least sort of the blueprint to copy or the benchmark for like high level defense now in the NBA is that you have to be switchable. Or to the other point that you made, this I think a great fundamental is like how do you game plan a defense that can be neutral for 48 minutes, where it's like there isn't a rotation, like rotation problems aren't going to exist with your 5 guys.
Yeah, and the modern concept associated with that most that I would point to is the peel switch. The peel switch OKC used a ton, and what a peel switch is you're trying to fight through the screen until you can't, and then you peel on to the other guy, and the man whose offensive player set the screen now switches later onto the ball handler. And so peel switching is becoming a big thing too, because you can still, out of a peel switch, you can blitz out of it, you can straight switch it, you can get over the top. There's so many different things that you can do out of a peel switch. It's a more intuitive defensive read and takes really good communication. But peel switching is what a lot of teams are starting to point to. With aggressive coverages against pick and roll, like a blitz is an aggressive coverage. If I come off a ball screen, both defenders are going to lift and try to corral or trap me into a space. And so what aggressive coverages do is they're trying to force a bad pass. Passive coverages are trying to force a bad shot. So a drop coverage, for example, you're putting 2 on the ball, it's passive, and we're trying to bait that 18-footer out. And then it's much easier to rebound out of passive coverages too. And so that's kind of the cat and mouse game. Is aggressive coverages, you're trying to force and put someone into a bad spot passing the ball. Dave Smart's infamous lock left system, for example. Let's make them force weak, whatever their weak hand is, we want them passing off of their weak hand to force bad passes. Whereas passive coverages, if we switch and stay neutral, now there's 4 seconds left on the shot clock, we're going to live with the Tatum step back, is what that's essentially saying. So at the lower levels, you can get away with aggressive coverages because decision making isn't there. They're not as tall, they can't pass, etc., like you can at the professional level. So
yeah, and certainly the point you're making about drop, it reminded me, going back to my Purdue roots for a second, like that the season where Purdue had the run going to the Final Four and ultimately the national championship game with Zach Edey principally. I mean, Purdue was constantly, I felt like they just had a really solid dial to turn on, like how they adjusted Zach Edey's drop to force those less desirable shots. And time and time again, like I would see these teams, they're thinking that, if I just get this get this off at the elbow in front of Edey, that's a win, like a win for us. Like,
exactly.
Please keep doing that, because you might get a couple, but he's going to clean most things up off the glass, and that's just possessions.
Exactly. Yeah, it's what you shoot from about 6 feet from the rim all the way back to the 3-point line, 23 feet, is going to be relatively the same. It's not going to be that much different. So like a contested 10-foot shot, 8-foot shot, you're going to shoot a similar percentage that you are from 3. And so the points per possession just aren't there, which is why we don't see any teams taking those kind of shots really anymore. And yeah, Edey and drop, he's tough because his minutes I don't think he can ever get to be a big minute player that a lottery pick should, because of his lack of switchability on the perimeter right now. And he is pretty agile, but I think he's going to kind of top out at that 25 minutes per game. We'll see. But yeah, he's fun to watch. He's good. I like him.
Yeah, the fundamental thing, like, he has to be able to be healthy for a full season.
Exactly.
knock on wood and fingers crossed. I just hope his ankles are healing. And I mean, he was on campus. Purdue had an alumni game, I think this past weekend or the previous weekend. I think that's a good thing for him, if nothing else. Just being familiar surroundings and just heal up and get ready for the grind next season.
For sure. Yeah. That Memphis Grizzlies team is going to be fun with Isalo as their coach. He's awesome. Love that guy. Like,
you're high on Isalo, right?
He's
like
so
I know.
Good. He's so good.
He's
just a genius.
Yeah. What is it that like resonates the most in terms of what he's doing in his coaching? Like, what is it that resonates the most with you?
Well, it kind of starts with conceptual basketball, but what he did in Paris was absurd. Like the amount of points they were scoring, the pace they were playing at, just unheard of. And I kind of love the trendsetters, the guys that lay the groundwork for innovation. And he was certainly doing it in Europe. And it's a style of play that can thrive in the NBA, playing that fast, conceptual basketball that can't be scouted. He's just smart, really, really well spoken. He has coaches use sticky language well, good coaches do anyway, and his sticky language is just awesome. If you're wanting to be a coach, you need to be able to have language that's going to resonate with your players. You can't use cliches. You got to get sticky with that language. And I took that from TJ Saint. He had one of the best podcasts I've ever seen with Slapping Glass and Chris Oliver, where he talks about his language and his pick and roll reads, and it's just fantastic stuff. There's so many good coaches out there, and coaches are lucky with X. You can get a PhD in basketball tomorrow. Not tomorrow, but
absolutely
you can get a PhD in basketball on X. It's incredible.
Yeah, there's no shortage of like great minds out there, and I've never coached basketball or even like I grew up playing basketball, but like basketball was never my organized game. It was just like, I went to the park or the playground and just play with friends. But I say all that because I think there are great ex-content creators out there, like Matt Hackenberg comes to mind. Mentioned Coach Nick. I've had the opportunity to interview him. Like, there's just all these great resources out there that I think there really isn't an excuse to like be misinformed about basketball if you're on X, because I just feel like we're in an era of information about the game where it's like, I wish I had this when I was growing up. But there's just like no shortage of just like really deep, detailed stuff that you can learn about basketball nowadays, just from the app.
Yeah, and just to change your paradigm, like, am I winning games because I'm doing this, or in spite of me doing this? Just changing your paradigm and challenging the way that you were taught when you were younger, and how you watch the game, and whatever your paradigm is. And it's just a lot of fun. It's definitely fun.
There's a question I want to pose to you too that's somewhat in the gameplay sphere, but it's also something I have been thinking about a lot since the finals. I want to get your take on there's almost like a perpetual debate about grifting, foul baiting. These guys and I guess I've had this idea I've wanted to write about it. I may still write about it, but like the ethics of fouls, free throw shooting, the free throw merchant charges, they get thrown around, especially with the SGA, right? Like what is like in your mind? What's the fair territory for like how you game plan, how you want to incorporate your free throw scoring into the game, because it's a part of the game, is a legitimate part, but at the same time, like there continues to be like these connotations that are levied against the players that are good at getting to the free throw line. For sure.
Yeah. And I just thought that I didn't answer your last one too with physicality in the half court, just to touch on that quickly. I think that a lot of that, like in the playoffs, you're playing more half court basketball, so I think that it looked like it was called less than it actually is, because it was played in the half court so much. Because it's played in the half court that much, it looks like it's a much more physical game than the regular season, which it is. But it's just the ratio of how much are you transitioning versus how much are you playing in the half court. But anyway, this is a good question. I hated watching Harden because of it, just full disclosure. I think that foul bait. Like when you have a bad foul, I mean, I know in FIBA, which is the rules that we play. I mean, you do get things like flop warnings. You'll get a T for dives, etc. But there's really nothing you can do about it as a ref in the moment when SGA goes up and he gets bumped on the hip. I mean, when it's a point A to point B, if he's knocking him off of his spot, there's really nothing that you can do. Like everyone thinks that SGA is a free throw merchant. Maybe he is, but there wasn't very many clips where you'd go back and say, okay, that wasn't a foul, you know? So by the letter of the law, anyway, I don't have an answer to that one. I really don't. That's a tough question. But the perspective to free throws is playing off 2 feet in the paint. I think that's the way that you do it as someone who's coaching at my level, all the way up to the NBA. Is you're teaching get to the paint so that you can play off 2 feet. Once you play off 2 feet, you can ball fake, you can cut through the arms, you can do all kinds of different stuff. Whereas if you play off 1 foot consistently, then it's really easy for the player to meet you with that cylinder high point you. So I think playing off 2 feet is a good way to get to the free throw line. But in terms of free throw merchant, I don't have the answer for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I also shout out a previous guest, and your fellow Canadian S. Barahani. He talked a lot about TJ McConnell actually during the finals, and like him just being like a human paint touch, and it's just that whole 2 feet. Yeah, to your just to sort of like echo that, like getting 2 feet in the paint. I think I think this finals in particular was a great. Like that should be something that's like almost branded into like this was the 2 feet finals. I feel like between like McConnell and Hallie and SGA, you just saw a lot of just relentless attacking the paint, and I enjoyed that quite a bit in that
for
series.
Sure. Yeah, and these offensive players are just so good. They have such good intuition. They know where the defender's hands are going to be, and they're just good at getting fouls. Plain and simple. It's not the prettiest to watch sometimes, but I mean, it is what it is. I think all of the generations have seen it. Kobe definitely foul baited in the early 2000s. Jordan got all the calls. You know, Harden got all the. It just is what it is.
It's a part of the game, and I think. I mean, if you, I mean, once you become like the elite of the elite in the league, like you're just gonna get those calls. That's been a part of the game for generations. So it isn't like a new thing or something where it's for like, oh, this is some injustice is being levied against the league. It's just, I mean, that's NBA basketball.
100%. No, I agree, and all professional sports, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah. And then one more question. So this isn't necessarily gameplay, but I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't ask you this question because you're coaching at the high school level. You're on the Adidas circuit. So, I mean, there's the grassroots level of basketball that you're being exposed to. The other sort of like topic that's gained a lot of, I think, conversation this offseason because, unfortunately, you know, how the playoffs went is, you know, the Achilles injuries continue to be like it continues to be a point of debate or discussion, I suppose, at least. And I would be curious, like, as you're teaching the game to your players and in, you know, the role you're playing in developing basketball players, what is the approach you're taking in, if anything, in terms of like helping players develop themselves in a way where like ideally you're trying to mitigate the risk profile of like those sort of catastrophic injuries as they go longer into their careers? Because I ask that because that seems to be like a recurring theme where people talk about like why are these injuries happening, and sort of like, you know, it's being framed as like, you know, it's the stress of all of these games that, you know, these players will have played many years ahead of like them getting to the NBA or even the high levels of like, you know, college or like, you know, other levels of professional sport.
Yeah. I'm not a doctor at all, but all the research that I've led, and I'm a huge proponent of multi-sport athletes. I think multi-sport athletes is the way that you mitigate risk. The wear and tear on bodies when you start specializing as an 11-year-old is just naturally going to build up, and the research shows that. I think it was Harvard that did a good piece on multi-sport athletes, but much less injury prone when you play multiple sports, simply because obviously you're working different parts of your body. I think it's overuse, but I also subscribe more to the European model than the American model of practicing too, in the sense that like in our off season, it should be like a 4-to-1 practice ratio to game ratio, whereas in season it's, you're playing a lot of games, but out of season it should be more development and versus games instead of the AAU model where you're going and you're playing a million games over a weekend and not practicing as much. That's my 2 cents on it. So I would say multi-sport athletes is the best way to go to try to negate some of those injuries.
Yeah, certainly. It seemed, at least when I was coming up, I remember, that was just kind of like the de facto expectation of being an athlete is that, you played multiple sports, you weren't just this hyper specialized athlete.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with that for sure.
Yeah. Well, Chris, this has been amazing, and I feel like, again, like every time you and I talk or something, like I just feel like the time just like it goes into a time warp. So I certainly appreciate just being able to finally have a public conversation with you about the game of basketball. Where can people find you? Where can people consume all the wonderful content you put out to the world?
On X, that's where I'm at. My handle is at Steeder10. Steeder10.
All right.
Yep.
I encourage everybody, again, if you really want to have the opportunity to like just make yourself more informed about basketball across the board, like I feel like there's no stone unturned. There's no stone unturned when you're following Chris on X. Like it's just a wealth of basketball knowledge. So please follow him. And then of course I will quickly say, please make sure that if you made it to the end here, thank you for that. Like, subscribe, leave a comment on this video. Constantly trying to grow this YouTube channel here from there is per possession. And then also please join our Patreon community as well, where we'll drop this podcast out there as well, but there's a lot of written content that I have out there, and really just trying to build up an awesome basketball community where we talk about the game like we just did tonight and celebrate the game. So appreciate everybody that rocks with us on those fronts. Thank you again, Chris, for joining us. And with that,
appreciate you having me, Mo. Thank you. Anytime.
Yeah, love to have you back. And definitely once we get into the new season, we'll be talking a lot as well, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, with that, I'm going to sign us off here. Thank you again, Chris. Have a great night.
You too.
Yeah, be well, everybody. Thanks.